I'm Andy Erwin, and this is the Storytellers. Coming up on this episode, I am so excited about this guest. This guy makes me smile every time I see his name come across my screen of my phone. I just get a text from him and it just changes my day. He's kind of a mythical kind of character that people talk about having seen him at like Disneyland or different places around California or around the world. And you never know where this guy and his red balloons are going to show up. And he had a successful job as a litigation attorney in Seattle, had earned over $500 million for his clients over the years. And one day folds up shop, quits his job, and decides to dedicate his life to being kind of the embodiment of the idea of loving your neighbor. And so he became a New York Times bestselling author. You know him from his books like Love Does and Everybody Always and so many others. And just the things that he's doing around the world to try to leave behind a little bit of love. So I know I've already given it away. You know who it is. Would you please welcome my guest, the one and only Bob Goff. Bob Goff, the one and only, welcome to the Storytellers. Glad to have you on, buddy.
Thanks a million. This is a treat. I'm just so glad that we're in the same virtual space right now. Even though we're separated, I always feel like super tight with you and all the mischief. I think we share that idea, like that chord. Like somebody said there's 7 love languages. I think the 8th one is mischief.
Yeah. Even if this is the fantasy of running off and doing something slightly fun and rebellious with you, just lights up my day. So I'll just get a text from you every now and then, be like, "Hey Andy, what are you doing? You want to get into some mischief today?" I'm like, "Yes, I do. I do. I love that." Where does that drive come from for you? Like where does that mischief, like that love language, where did it resonate?
Yeah,
with?
I'd say if you follow all the strings, like what that points toward is just being curious about what would happen. I was thinking there's a person that runs this country, and there was an appointment to go and see this fellow, and I thought, I don't want a selfie with him. But I brought the leader of the rebel group
Yeah.
that they were actually had been at war with for a couple decades. And nobody knew. He was just sitting next to me. And then when we stood up to walk in, somebody recognized. They go like, "Hey, wait, you're like that guy," and they threw us out. Like, I've been thrown out of nicer places than this. But that would be that kind of, it's mischief with a purpose. It would be strategic whimsy. So there's people that are doing like ding dong ditch. That's just like to see, hey, I wonder if it'll work. And that's okay. But what if there was a purpose behind that you wanted to actually get people together around something that's lasting, that was something that would have more shelf life than just like today's headline. So I think that's it. So underneath, like a lot of people, and you're one of them, there's a veneer of like yippee skippy and all that. But then underneath that is a mile of strategy. Like, you know why you're doing what you're doing.
Well, and that's what I love about you. I want to kind of get into kind of some of the things that take you from being a successful litigation attorney to wanting to kind of dedicate your life to whimsy, and like the anger it takes to make that really hard right kind of choice is pretty amazing. I know that when we met, you were kind of a mythical creature. Where I had read Love Does, and our mutual friend Bart Millard from Mercy Me, he was like, "You've got to go meet Bob. You got to meet Bob." And I was like, "I would love to. Where do you find him?" He's like, "Well, where did it say in the book?" I said, "Well, it says he's at Tom Sawyer Island at Disneyland." And I said, "But that's that's storytelling." He's like, "No, he's at Tom Sawyer Island at Disneyland." And so we booked the trip to LA, got tickets to Disneyland, showed up at Tom Sawyer Island, and there you are sitting at your little picnic table. It was just like, out of all of the magical characters at Disneyland, like the Bob Goff sighting was by far my most exciting, profound experience.
And you actually get to talk. You aren't like in a uniform that looks like Tigger or something. You actually get to say things.
It was great. I mean, we sat down at that picnic table and just had the most amazing conversation. And afterwards, I think we snuck under the table and signed it with our Sharpie pen.
Yeah,
and
I don't recall.
Yeah, I may or may not have. Yes, I don't know. but for you, like, where does that idea of whimsy, where did it kind of start in you? And then, like, after having a very successful career as an attorney, what makes you angry enough to kind of close the door and say, okay, I'm not doing this anymore, and I'm going to dedicate my life to this idea? Where did that come from for you?
Yeah. So sometimes if you think about the motivations for all of us, most of the things we do are motivated by either love or fear or some combination of those. It could be some unreconciled trauma in your life. It could be all kinds of things, but it's usually some like base elements have love and fear in it. And so it wasn't a decision like rejecting being a lawyer because I love being a lawyer, but to just say, how can I do some things that are a little bit more lasting than whatever I'm doing right
Yeah.
now? And so, no matter whatever it is that you're doing, to say what could move the needle in that direction of something a little bit more lasting. There's a lot of people that ask questions about finding balance in your life. I feel like if you spend a lot of time focusing on balance, you'll actually tip over. It's kind of like standing on a fence, looking at your feet
Yeah.
with your hands in your pockets,
Uh-huh.
like you're actually going to tip over. But if you get your arms out and you're looking at the horizon, then we just have a little bit longer view. And so looking at the horizon means understanding what's blocking your view. And so if you've had some stuff that you're afraid of, let's understand it. And then once we can see it, we can understand it. But stop asking everybody for permission to live your life. Like
Huh.
to just say, I wasn't trying to get consensus around the idea of what I do after being a lawyer. I literally walked into my own law firm and I quit. I got everybody
I'm
in the
done.
room, but it didn't happen just on the spur of the moment. I walked out of the elevator on the 17th and 18th floor of this high rise in downtown Seattle. And the receptionist said, "Who are you here to see?" I'm like, "Oh, actually, that's my name." Like, and I realized that life's events had taken me away from who I was. And it was just at some point you go full Cortez and just burn the ships.
Huh.
And so that can be scary. People will misunderstand you and they'll think they're being helpful, but they'll keep you kind of in an aversion of yourself that's
Yeah.
surrounded by your capabilities. And I think what you and I are talking about is calling.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be this mystical thing. Like I get a lot of calls on this. I've
Yeah.
4 million people have my personal cell phone number.
Which is incredibly brave. And I tested it as soon as we hung out. I'm like, it says in the back of the book that this is his cell phone number. I'm like, I'm going to call it. I know it's just a marketing gimmick. I called it. It's like, hi, this is Bob. I'm like, what? Like,
I got a call from some woman and I answered the phone and she said, "Bob?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "I heard you were dead." Tell me you're not reading tomorrow's newspaper.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
so that idea of fear and love sometimes will express itself in availability. It
Huh.
won't for everybody, but we can each be available in our own ways. So, like Sweet Maria Goff, my wife of 37 years,
Hmm.
3 months, 11 days.
Wow.
I'm counting up, she's counting down.
I love it.
But of all of that time with her, she is available to me, the people we made, the people they married, the people they made.
Uh-huh.
That's it. And so she's just very clear on who she's available to and why. And for you and I, we just like other people. That's like, I don't know. It just feels like all the happiness is out there. And you'll meet a couple odd ducks, but I'm not going to be like dissuade. I'm not going to let fear grab the
Huh.
microphone and make me pull back. I'm just thinking, God, there's some other people I'll probably meet along the way that'll inform more about my hopes for myself and for my faith and for my friends. And yeah.
I love that about you. And I consider myself super privileged because I came through your house. I was in San Diego and I was going to go eat lunch with you. And I met you at your house and I briefly walked through the living room and I got to meet the sweet Maria that I've heard so much
You
about.
saw the
Yes,
unicorn.
I saw her. And I tried really hard not to spook her. I just kind of was very polite, kind of stepped through, and she was very
Right.
sweet and warm. And I was like, I know this is sacred ground. And so I'm going to say my hellos and go to lunch with your
Yeah.
husband.
No
But-
fast moves.
Yeah, no fast moves. Don't want to
No
spook her.
raised voices. Yeah.
For anybody that's not familiar with Love Does, like you've gone on to, you've written 3 books that have been New York Times bestsellers. But that first book, Love Does, really launched a movement. Like just people really grasped the childlike simplicity of the concept that you're trying to get across. When did you sit down and say, like, I want to write this in a book form, and I'd like to author this kind of idea more than just live it. I want to kind of represent it and tell a fuller story. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I think it's part of this legacy idea that that we leave some things behind that we're here. Think of it: 105 billion people have ever lived on this marble, and there's about 8 billion, give or take, that are here now. So there's about 15 people not here for
Hmm.
everyone that is. And I just want you and I think this is probably, if we peel back why you make movies, we want to leave something beautiful. We want to
Yeah,
give something lasting when you and I are in a jar somewhere.
yeah,
Right.
right.
Actually, I've opted. I think I'm going for an hourglass.
Hourglass. I
I
like
don't know if that's creepy or
it.
beautiful. I just want to spend 45 minutes with great grandpa Bob.
I love
And
it.
then I need to have a recording in there like, let me out of here. Bam.
I love it. I love it.
But I think it's motivated by a desire to leave something lasting. And sometimes what we do is we think we have to go across an ocean
Yep.
to do that. And gosh, even for those that follow the scriptures, there's only two times that Jesus crossed an ocean or one of his friends did. Paul got shipwrecked
Yep.
and like Jonah got eaten. So you're going to find a ton of stuff about going across the street. So I think a lot of the motivation for me is to say, how can we release our love right where we live? Because if it doesn't work at the end of your street, don't do this thing. I'm going to go to the end of the earth. It sounds noble. It ain't noble.
Mm.
It's actually disobedient at one level. And what we want to do is just kind of make it happen, and not with somebody who's super easy to get along
Mm.
with, like you. You're low hanging fruit. Find somebody who's a little prickly, who's
Uh-huh.
super insecure like me, and try to deal with that person when they're feeling particularly insecure. Like that's when we really go like, okay, that is where it's game time.
Yeah, I mean, in your stories did start literally across the street with your neighbor who, had cancer and did the amazing thing that you lay out in the book of this town parade that goes through the middle of town to honor her and to be able to allow her to feel loved and a part of the community. And then it kind of ended up leading you around the world to places like the Middle East and to Uganda and some really outlandish, kind of potentially very dangerous stories. Like, did you ever expect it to expand beyond just right across the street?
I don't think I had an expectation, but it's kind of like next thing to say. You could say, if you are prone to seeing the world this way, if you think of like the x axis, like one line, is all of your ambitions. And like you, there are many things that are on my ambitions list. And then the y axis, the other axis that crosses it, is an opportunity. So wherever that crosses, and there's an infinite number of places it crosses,
Yeah.
wherever an opportunity and ambition cross, like game on to say, could there be something here that we should like just pull on the string and see what moves? And so it happens here. And next week I'll be up in San Quentin again with our
Yeah.
friends there, and not as a teacher, but as a student of theirs. However, they enroll in a class, and the ones that aren't in for life get times off their sentence,
Hmm.
which is really beautiful. Like, so you can think of these idea of like setting prisoners free. I do it just like one class hour at a time.
That's awesome. I love it. I'd
And
take
there's some
that.
creepy guys in there. I got Manson family members. And
Wow.
but you know what? And the crazy part is there's an app where they can call me up.
Uh-huh.
Like I'm getting calls from I get so many calls from San Quentin now. Like and there's something beautiful. They just want to say hi. They just want to connect. And I don't know, man. It won't cost you a nickel, but it'll cost you maybe 5 minutes. And I want to be like wealthy in that way. I want to
Hmm.
be like just say everybody's got 5 minutes.
Hmm.
And I'm not critical if somebody doesn't, but
Yeah.
I just feel like I would be missing out on some really neat things if I didn't have the opportunity to connect with some people.
So, like you talk about, low hanging fruit is the people that are naturally in your sphere to love, and sometimes you have to search out the one that is the challenge, the prickly pear. Um, what's been one of the ones that you've interacted with that's been like a bigger challenge that you kind of personally took on that you just said, this is one I just feel compelled to kind of crack this nut and really kind of let the love seep through on this individual.
Yeah, sometimes it'll be people where faith seems far away, and sometimes it will be like kind of like the guards of faith, or sometimes its biggest prisoners.
Oh
Uh,
wow,
and
well
so, what I
said.
want to do is to not challenge them. I win arguments for a living, but I'm not trying to be like right. But how could I be a little bit more like Jesus? And man, I got a long way to go, and not enough time to get there. However, how can we approach that with kindness? And so,
Mhm.
what I find is if I can express some ideas in words that are very safe, then certainly there'll be some people that might not agree with them, but I can give a more reasoned, measured invitation to just say, and that's the idea of storytelling. You're nobody better at that than you. Um, that storytelling, like you can't disagree with the story. The story is what happened.
Mhm.
Now you can disagree with the conclusion,
Right.
but I like that everybody gets to see not your coach, but their coach.
Yep.
They don't get to see your problem person, but
Hmm.
their problem person. And the person that did something selfless and beautiful in your life, they'll think of somebody that did something selfless and
Yep.
beautiful in their life. So if we can have opaque stories that aren't about us,
I love
but they
that.
point towards something really beautiful, I always tell people like one me, my, or I to get you there. And then everything else has to be we, us, and our.
Mm.
Because if you use words like me, my, and I more than once, I need $100 every time you use it. I'm going to count it up. You can send it, Venmo me, because it's costing you. It's costing you. If you make it about you, it'll never be interested. It's like having somebody watch your vacation pictures. If you make it about somebody else, then they see themselves.
That's because it is like, I mean, what we do is very similar. I mean, and I know that you've really invested a lot in storytellers. I want to get to that in a minute, but like, for us, it's about, we love true stories because there's something really invitational when you can let somebody know your personal experience. They don't know how to debate that. It's like, I'm not just kind of preaching dogma. I'm just saying this is what happened to me. But if you can take that and get them to engage in a way, it becomes this vicarious emotional journey. That if they can
Yes.
emotionally attach, then like you said, they connect the dots to their own experience and draw their own conclusion. If you can just kind of have confidence, a very simple idea, whether it's redemption or love or whatever that is, and just kind of plant the seed and step away, then it does what it's going to do, and sometimes it takes root. And so I love that about you. The other thing I love, like I've always been fascinated by storytellers that kind of interact with each other. So I like, especially when it comes to authors, like I always love the friendship between, C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien. And it's like, there was just something about them sharing ideas. And I've always loved, with you and Donald Miller early in your career, when you were an aspiring writer just getting started, and he had written Blue Like Jazz and other things, and y'all's friendship. How is that cross pollination of storytellers and sharing ideas? What was that like in your journey?
Yeah, I just have learned so much from people who are good at making it about other people.
Mm,
And we all bring our insecurities.
right.
The If you've read this brilliant book by Mike Foster, The Seven Primal Questions,
Huh.
such a good book. It'll take you 15 minutes to breeze through that thing. But the premise of this book would be that the question we ask is also the superpower we bring.
Hmm.
And he's just such a brilliant guy, a great read. But the question I always find myself asking is, am I wanted?
Hmm.
Which would be kind of unlikely for people that have experienced me as the guy that yippee skippy and look, let's do this thing. But underlying that is this question of, am I wanted?
Hmm.
Everywhere I go, everything I do. For Maria, her question is, am I safe?
Yeah,
Right. And so,
totally.
like Waffle House 724, like she's just assessing, am I safe? And then things happen in our lives that like stir up this question. She was actually moving some baggage around in the attic, and I think she forgot the pull down stairs were open, and she did a header out of the
Oh my
attic like
gosh.
3 weeks ago, all the way down, no stairs, just boom on her head. And I get home, I was changing the oil on her car. I've got the receipts, I've got an alibi. I get home and she's out cold. And
Oh my,
she, when she comes to, she can't feel her arms or her
oh my
legs.
gosh.
I'm like, oh my goodness. So, fire trucks and ambulances and all that. And I think when your body really takes a shot like that, it just finds its off switch.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it finds back on and sometimes it doesn't. And so now we're at the hospital and she starts getting the feeling back in her legs and arms. And the doctor leans over and says, "Where are you feeling the most pain?" And she pointed to me. He's back. This did not help her with her question about, am I safe? And it
Huh.
wasn't some about getting shanked. It's about like, I can't get her back in the attic now.
Mm.
And for good reason, because she
Yeah.
had this experience and she equates attic equals bad. So for me, am I wanted?
Yeah.
Like I'm constantly asking that in friendships and other things. And it's not like I'm not the victim in the story nor
Yeah.
the hero. But where Mike brilliantly takes this thing is he would say that your biggest question is also your superpower.
Wow.
So Maria makes everybody feel safe.
Huh.
If you came over and she would feel so safe here, she'd be like, detailing your cars. You just feel welcome and
Huh.
safe and all that. I wrote a book called Everybody Always.
Uh-huh.
All these
You're like
people,
you're
my
wanted.
phone number, you're wanted, you're wanted, you're worth it, you're worth it.
Huh.
Some other people, their jam may be success. Like they're just their insecurities, like, am I successful? Am I successful? Am I successful? And so they've got their big house in the background or their big
Mm.
whatever. It's not, we all have our stuff. And that is also the superpower. Like you
Huh.
actually help people be successful. I would think a guy like you, it would just be so interesting. What do you think your question would be?
I think what drives my storytelling and everything else is just a high degree of emotional empathy. I want people to be. I think the question would be, "Am I understood?" And then
Bingo.
and so I
Yeah.
really
Am
want
I
people to feel
enough?
understood.
Am I? Yeah. And so you definitely give off that vibe in all of our interactions for over the course of our friendship.
Yeah.
Like you're the encourager there. You've got that. And oftentimes we're not blowing sunshine at other people, but we've turned our big questions into
Mm.
the thing that we release into the world. And
Wow.
so I would say so too with the storytelling,
Hmm.
that we want a Maria 45 minutes before someone arrives. It'll probably be a kid, the person they married, or the person they made, but she'll put cookies in the oven.
Yeah.
And it isn't like happenstance, but she wants people to feel welcomed, invited, all that in our faith communities. Like some people, and we hear people say, like, uh, everyone's welcome. But so we go around inviting people, but then when they arrive, they don't feel welcome.
Right.
And that's not an indictment, but what I want to do is have people smell the cookies in the oven. The reason I do what I do, yeah, I make a lousy evangelical because I just don't think we lead people to Jesus. I think
Mm.
Jesus leads people to
Yeah.
Jesus. What we do is slip the cookies in the oven.
Yes.
Uh, and to just say, that's what you do with your movie making. That's what
Yep.
storytellers do. They say, why don't you come with all of your ish and I'll come with all of my ish and let's get real enough to have a moment where we can sort it out in a really safe place.
Hmm.
And that could be Starbucks. It could be in the front lawn, but I think that's what happens with you in a movie theater. People bring their pent up whatever, their
Yep.
questions, their superpowers, and you help them unlock it. And they walk away feeling like, I understand more about why I do what I do.
Yeah. No, I mean, for us, it's very similar. It's like if we can plant that idea, that simple idea, uh, you know, emotionally in somebody's spirit, that they can't, that place that has no definition with words, but you just feel. If you can plant something there and just have the confidence to step away, then the person will go, it'll stick with them. And then they'll have to wrestle with it for themselves and find what their conclusions are. But it's like it's not my job to seal the deal. I just tell the story.
Yeah, that's a really important thing. Like none of us wants to be controlled,
Mm.
which is just another way for manipulated. Like
Yeah.
just feels like a harsher way to describe that. but I was speaking somewhere, and the host, wanted me to be elsewhere. But there was a young man that really wanted to talk about something, and so I was on the side talking to him. And this host was like, obviously impatient. And after a few minutes, he took me by the shoulders, and he started physically like moving me.
Huh.
And I'm thinking in my thought bubble, like, what hospital do you want to go to? Taking baby steps here. But had he said, Bob, I think I know why you came here, and you could do 3 times more of that if you were to move 40 feet to your left, I'd be, let's go. So, like,
Yeah.
influencing people, not controlling people.
I love that.
And I think that's what you do beautifully in your movies. You influence people. You don't tell them what to think. You remind them who they are. You're the tap on the shoulder, and they turn around to say who's there, and they see themselves.
Wow.
Like, I want to be like, yes, that's it. So I think of books, like if you can think of, I've seen buildings that have mirrorized kind of glazing, and I've seen cars, I've seen sunglasses. But if you think of the pages of a book, I want people to see themselves, not me.
I
Like,
love
so
that.
then they turn the next page and they see themselves again. And so I think the movie version of that, there's something projected up there, but they're inserting a character into that, which is them. So I'm just so glad you guys are doing. Hey, well, my question for you is, what do you do when you're misunderstood? Because it must happen all the time.
I've wrestled with that for a long time. I felt like I needed to set the record straight. I'm a chronic over explainer, and where I'll need to try to help people understand. I've had to learn how to affirm myself and understand where the other person's coming from, and to take a step back and seek to understand before I'm understood,
Yeah.
and then surrender that sometimes that person's just not going to get it, and
Yeah.
it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's a life's journey. I mean, my sweet wife Mandy has been the biggest tool to help me learn how to understand that better. And say like,
Yeah.
hey, you're repeating yourself, and I'm like, oh, okay, I don't feel understood.
Yeah. I don't rule out the possibility that, strong possibility that they're probably right
Yeah,
in some measure, that there might be a kernel of truth in there, or maybe like a whole dollop or a whole wheelbarrow full. But to say maybe it is in their people skills and the way that they went about it.
yeah,
If somebody spoke ill about you, they probably didn't intend to. They're not an evil person, but it was like a relational misstep. But it's what happens next which tells the story,
I love that.
right? It's what happens next. How do you get back to where you were before? I know I wrote a book, and this most recent one, and somebody called and said, "Hey, are you watering down the gospel again?" I said, "Yes." Man, I hang a salt lick at the end of every pew. I want people, if you're not thirsty, you're going to hate the books. If people aren't thirsty, they're not going to enjoy the movie.
Yeah,
And so when they say, they go like, yeah, I really didn't do anything for me, it's not an indictment of them. They're probably right.
yeah,
However, they probably, if you were to put some hydrometer in them, they didn't come in thirsty.
yeah,
And so they weren't hungry. And so they felt they weren't satisfied, but they weren't hungry.
yeah,
So it makes sense. It's not flipping it on them, but to say there's probably some truth in that. And there's probably a reflection of where they happen to be. So I would imagine with you finding the right moment to land the right story,
yeah,
so people are actually thirsty enough and hungry enough to not consume from like monetarily, but that they're ready. They have an appetite for
what
that.
and understanding that not every story is for everyone, and to understand what's your target. And so we absolutely deal in stories of faith and redemption. We love true stories. We feel like there's a power in somebody's experience, and we look for stories that have that redemption, that faith, that love, those things that we aspire to kind of naturally in them. And so we try to service those core fans that we know that are really want to consume our product, and help them to see that they're valued and they're seen and they're heard. But then there's the 30% or so of the audience that they're going to get triggered with the material regardless, whether they're hyper religious or whether they're very against anything faith. They're going to get, it's not their cup of tea, and so they're going to be offended no matter what we put out. But there's this 50% in the middle that we call the benevolent skeptic. And the benevolent skeptic are the audience that they don't know that they want faith. They don't know that they're thirsty. They don't know that they're hungry. But we present something that just introduces them to the idea of redemption. And it, for those that are truly thirsty, it triggers something in them. And then
Yeah.
they start searching it out for themselves. And we just accept people on their journey of wherever they're at, and that it's an invitation. And
Yeah,
that's what we do.
when you say the word skeptic, I was thinking of Diogenes, like the founder of cynicism,
Yep.
that lived in a water barrel. That was a pretty big water barrel, but he would go through Athens every day at high noon with his lamp lit, and people would say, "Diogenes, what are you doing?" And he said, "I'm looking for virtue."
Huh.
And I think that would be a modern day cynic is
Yep.
like rolling their eyes and saying, yeah, Southwest,
Yeah.
inflation, or whatever. But the original cynics were Diogenes. They lived apart,
Yep.
they made their own clothes, but they were looking for virtue.
Hmm.
And boy, give me a bunch of original kind of cynics, people looking for virtue.
Yeah, that's it.
Because the other people are like, it's just dime a dozen.
Yep.
Sniper fire is easy. You just find some self-elevated
Yep.
position and aim at everybody else other than yourself.
Yeah, and those Diogenes type people that are seeking truth, they're seeking virtue, and they just nobody's introduced them to that source that we really believe is rooted in what we believe. But the ideas, when we find one of those are the ones I value. I'll take one of those
Come
much
on.
more than 100,000 of the people that are already in the audience. And
Yes.
so like there was this one critic that on one of our projects, in his bio, he even proclaims that he's a agnostic. He doesn't really believe in God. But the headline for the critic review of this one project we did is, I'm not a person of faith, but I think the Erwins have somehow manipulated my brain cells into feeling something that I don't understand. And so I
That's at least a misdemeanor.
I know. And I actually reached out to him on social media and I said, man, I read your review and I just want to say what you said about the film was a treasure to me because it was hard fought. And he was very intrigued. We just started a relationship where we keep in touch. And I love, that's the kind that I like. Those are the ones that I'm like, that's the target I want.
Yes, totally. I'm thinking about a guy who there's not very many people I can't get along with, but there's one guy that's kind of like the opposite of me. He's like vulgar and he cusses a lot and he this and that, and that's okay. Sometimes a good cuss word just has like creates the moment.
Yeah.
But when they're all hyphenated and all that, and very like kind of putting everybody down. Anyway, he ended up being an organizer of a big movement, and I found out a guy who knew him, and he ended up all over the pages because he had done something wrong. And so I reached out to him. I called him up and I said, "Hey, man, you don't know me. My name is Bob, and but I just want to thank you for kind of like what you did for like your contribution. You don't express yourself the way that I express, but I just wanted to thank you. And I wasn't doing it to be a swell guy. I was doing it because I saw a big a sucking wound in my life that I was harboring this thing. And he, in a moment of like just honesty, he said, "Man, you don't know the half of it. I've gotten 3 death threats this
Wow.
week, and I need to pack up. My family, my mother-in-law lives with us. We need to move." And I like thought, what if I help you?
Wow.
And so I got a plane
That's
ticket.
cool.
I flew across the country to where he was, and I showed up at his door. And there's a box at the front. It said China. I was thinking it wasn't the whole country. And I picked up the box. The bottom falls out.
Oh, no.
I break every plate he owns. I've known this guy for 30 seconds. I just trashed all of his family heirlooms. And he looks at me and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get a whole earful. And he said, rookie mistake.
Wow.
Like, I love
That's
this
great.
guy. And so we stayed friends, kind of like that idea of like overcoming. It doesn't, again, make you the hero or the victim, but it makes us participants.
Yeah.
I think fewer observers, more participants. If you know this parade that we do on the block here, everybody in, nobody watching.
I love it.
And so we aren't coming to observe other people or offer opinions about other people, but to like engage them or don't and shut up.
Hmm.
But don't like just start throwing these. I don't want people to meet my opinions. I want them to meet Jesus.
Wow.
And I'm not forcing people. I just want them to. Maybe I love the verse that says, after like, who do you say I am? And he says, don't tell anybody.
Hmm.
I think show people, don't tell people.
I love
And
that.
if we get that, maybe in your movies, you're just saying, I'm just going to show you some neat
Mhm.
things and then you figure it out, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I love that. And don't do it with just the easy people.
Hmm.
I'm too easy. But find somebody that is, difficult, somebody that in your life is, and you won't engage everybody and have it work out.
Right.
You'll try and you'll miss, and that doesn't make them the bad guy. It just makes them just whoever they happen to be, and you're whoever you happen
Yeah.
to be. And don't get distracted by that. Just keep moving on.
I love how I mean, even some of the questions you just asked me on the podcast that are those soul searching kind of questions to try to find, you've always been a good mentor like that to encourage and kind of point me in the right direction. And I know you've done that for a lot of people. Like I was at a concert a while back that Lauren Daigle was singing at, and she got up on stage, and right before she started, she put down a little miniature Mr. Potato Head on the stage. and she said this, and she tells the crowd, you're probably wondering what I'm doing, but sometimes this job can be really overwhelming. And my friend Bob gave me this potato head and said, don't forget the little girl in you. And she's like, and this is a reminder. And I'm sitting there, I was like, she had to be talking about Bob Goff. And I was like, that's a Bobism. And so it's like God's put you in these circles of different people, of storytellers, to really try to kind of give away what you're about, so that it, like you said, it can be remembered beyond you. You started these storyteller retreats and a lot of different things. What are you doing to try to invest in kind of future storytellers right now?
Yeah, I think the idea is to sometimes we don't feel invited to things. And so I just want to figure out, how do we just let people know that you're invited, and not because I'm a swell guy, but I came like selfishly, I need to hear what you've got. So can you distill down what you've got? And I love bearing witness to something happening, something really beautiful and redemptive. I heard a story, maybe you've heard about a gal named Charlotte McCollum who tragically lost her husband, Oswald, in 2003. Have you gone to London and gone into those the subway station, and there's that voice that mind the gap?
It's
Like
on my
that,
to-do list. It's on my
yeah,
to-do list.
it's Oswald's voice.
Huh.
Since 2003, she goes to the subway every day to listen to Oswald's voice. Isn't
Wow.
that beautiful?
Wow.
And then recently, what they did is they changed over the subway system to an electronic voice. And the people in London heard about that runs a subway station, and they changed the voice back to Oswald's at her voice, at her platform that she goes and sits. I hear stories like that, and I go, gosh, humanity, we've got a lot of stuff wrong, but we've got a couple things right. And I want to draw the attention, like Diogenes. I want to lift that lantern high over that, and not in a very saccharine kind of manufactured way, but to say there's a lot of beauty and you're going to find what you're looking for.
Love
How
it.
many times have you ever found, like, Andy, a car that you wanted,
Mhm.
and then it seems like every third car is that car?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You notice it. You're like, I didn't think anybody in this city owned this car. And then you start like planning to buy it, and you look out and like everybody's got it.
Yeah, 71 Volkswagen Beetle convertible. I decided like I wanted to get a 71 Volkswagen Beetle convertible because in 1971 I had one.
Wow.
And so all of a sudden I started seeing all these things. Then get this, Andy. I've been like so busy, I make coffee nervous. I'm go, 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 go. And these Volkswagen Beetles, they won't hit 40 miles an hour downhill with a stiff wind behind you. So I found one literally in a barn in Oregon. I bought it for a couple $1,000. That's the car I drive.
No.
It goes 40 miles an hour, soaking wet, and I've slowed down. It's just the best thing, and I mean soaking wet because the top's down and it's raining right now. I just remembered. So what I wanted to do is to just manufacture those things that'll help remind us about the whimsy and wonder and who we are. I wear a mood ring.
Huh.
Like I don't wear it because it's a throwback to the 60s. Maria doesn't ask me where I am because, like you, I travel around a lot.
Yeah.
She asks about how I am.
Yeah.
And so when I'm caused to say, she'll say, "What color is your ring?" And I'll say, "Blue with a little green." She's like, "What does that feel like?"
Huh.
And so if we start talking about how I am, it makes us feel close. If we talk about where I am, it makes us feel far
Huh.
apart. And I think these are the stories that you tell. Like you just help cause people to say, find a white spot in the road and say, how do I feel about that? Or maybe they're feeling something that they've forgotten for a while. And while it doesn't feel contrived, but it feels very intentional to get an exceptionally slow car. And it's caused me to just chill out in my relationships because I can't be in a hurry. I don't have hurry in me anymore.
I love that about you. So, with the, you found your story to tell. You found something that was really in your DNA of, this is something I want to leave the world. I want to kind of to experience this and share it with people. With other young storytellers that you interact with, what would be your advice and encouragement on them finding their story?
Oh man, take notes. Just on the things that happen. I even saw you like reach down, like
Mhm.
to write a note. People that tell good stories take good notes.
Huh.
So I bet I send on an average day 60 to 100 emails to myself.
Huh.
Like I'll get home, I'm like, him again, block. But it'll be little shards of ideas, and you don't want to have a conversation with somebody and then later be asked, how was your conversation with whatever, and say, oh, it was okay. Like, I don't know, there was like, so we just spent an hour
Yep.
of our life, like, let's just take some notes. And
Hmm.
I'm not saying lift people's quotes. I think and say, I bet if I look at all of your notes that you take throughout the day, it would be filled with adjacent ideas.
Yeah.
So somebody says something which ricochets off three
Hmm.
experiences and two opinions, and then you'll write on the other side that adjacent idea. And so what I'll do is I'll just take all the adjacent ideas. I don't have quiet times, haven't had one in 30 years. Mine are like super loud. And what I'll do is I'll just say, what are all the things that I was thinking about, and these adjacent ideas that came to mind? And I'll just say, are they true? Do they
Wow.
sound right, or are they true? And if I don't know that they're actually true, then I don't put them in my books. If I
Man.
do know they're true, I write them down.
With for you, like, you've said a lot in the books that you've written. What does the next chapter look like for Bob Goff?
Oh yeah, yeah. So at 65, I'm a grandpa now,
That's awesome.
and I've moved the program a little bit closer to home. I bought this old Young Life camp with a buddy, Miles Adcox, and another one, Jamie Kern Lima, and we started this retreat center. We put in a vineyard.
Man.
There's 50,000 bottles a year of wine come out of that thing, which is crazy because I haven't had my second glass. I'm a Dr. Pepper guy. But like that idea of whimsy and wonder, there's horses, and it's essentially, I made my own Tom Sawyer Island.
I
And then
love
we
that.
let people come and just get better.
Huh.
They get better if they want to get better at their faith or their relationships or their whatever they need to get better at. We hope they'll just do that. The only people we said no to, it was a nudist colony. I'm like, oh, dude, I just cannot unsee that. We need to get a little cloth between your butt and my leather couch. So there's something actually kind of beautiful about creating places. And the neat part is, like, you can go to Starbucks with somebody, make
Mhm.
them pay, and then you'll have an absolutely free place to create your own community.
Huh.
So it isn't like well, that's great if you can get the retreat center, but like, go get two chairs
Hmm.
and spend 3 intentional minutes, and just to say, I don't want you to comment. I don't want you to say it's okay or don't feel that. I'm just going to tell you the way it really is. This is what it feels like to be me right now.
Hmm.
And then I'd like to hear what it
Hmm.
feels like to be you right now. And if we do that, like, well, we'll even do it right now. What it feels like to be me is, it feels like 100% anticipation and 110% insecurity. Is
Hmm.
that crazy? And so behind all that insecurity is a longing to be wanted. Um, and I want to leave a legacy that is more than just like these diplomas or things that God is going to make confetti out of to
Mm,
celebrate the poor someday. But I want to leave lasting change.
mm.
What does it feel like to be you, Andy?
Man, I think what it feels like to be me um, is, uh, you know, is this idea that it's okay to dream again. As somebody that's always been there to serve other people's dreams and kind of be a doer, uh, for the first time in the past year, I've begun to understand what I want for me, and and what the anger that gets me up in the morning to say to the world, what do I want to say, the passion that really pushes me. And I've always been told that I'm a good doer, I'm not a leader. And it's so awesome to be put in a place that you feel like is a weakness and to begin to discover there's more that you can do.
So good. I just want the people that are listening to have those conversations. Don't you dare ask somebody, "How are you?" Because then they're going to say, "Fine, how are you?" And then you're going to say, "Fine." And then you'll get on with whatever it is. It's not that that doesn't matter, but it's just it's being polite. And I don't want us to be polite with one another. I want to find us places where we can be honest with
Huh.
one another. And as soon as I say that or you say that, then everybody goes like, "Oh wow, we're going to have the real conversation." And so just what's it feel like to be you? Or if you have kids, like draw a picture what it feels like to be you right now.
I love
There
that.
was a big, outfit, and their leadership team said in the middle of COVID, I said, draw a picture what it feels like to be you. And these guys were not in the church choir. So sort of as annotated, it was like, wow, it was really telling. It
Huh.
was beautiful. But people got real about what it felt like. And I think we can have different conversations and different outcomes. And we can access different stories with different endings. And it all starts with these kinds of friendships like you and I have.
Do you still go to Tom Sawyer Island? Is that still part of
Oh my
your
gosh, I was there a week ago with 100 people.
100 people?
Yeah, we called it a school of whimsy, and then so we just bought 100 tickets to Disneyland, and then I said I'll be there at 3 o'clock. And when all the people showed up, so did the security. I got thrown off of Tom Sawyer Island. Like,
You're like,
I
I'm the mayor of Tom Sawyer Island.
Yeah,
Come
but
on.
the person escorting me off, I thought like, oh no, no, I don't want to intervene. I want to get to know them. And so I got their name. And I think this is the beginning of a great story. The week before, we have a tradition where the Chief Justice of Uganda's Supreme Court, we had met there 20 years ago, and we stacked hands and we said some stuff we were going to
Uh-huh.
do in the country of Uganda. Now, he's since retired. He termed out under the Constitution. So the new Chief Justice of the Supreme Court was in Southern California. So I said, "You want to meet me at my office?" He's like, "Oh, okay." And so we met at Tom Sawyer Island and we stacked hands again. And we just said, what are the beautiful, lasting things that we want to leave behind?
Huh.
Interestingly, his comment was that I want my people to remember me for what I did when I wasn't the Chief Justice,
Hmm.
not for when I was. And I just think if we can have more of those conversations with people, and it doesn't have to be people with big titles, find like Jesus did, like unschooled, ordinary people.
Hmm.
It said in the book of Acts, it said they saw their courage and they knew they'd been with Jesus. And
Hmm.
so if faith guides your steps, man, just find unschooled, ordinary people and say, come on, teach me.
Man, I love that. So just a few last questions as we kind of wrap up. And these are more fun ones. You're a guy of mischief. Is there anything on Bob Goff's bucket list of mischief that you still have to check off? Like things are like you one day you want to do this.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a couple lessons away from getting my hot air balloon license. And
I didn't know that you got a license for a hot air balloon. That's I guess
yeah, yeah.
you
And once
would
you have
think
a
you do.
pilot's license, it's an add-on.
Yeah.
And so you just need to get a couple more lessons. I'll have that. And I just want to go to Albuquerque, once a
Huh.
year and go up in the air until I hit a hot, electrical wire or something. But the thing about hot air balloons is that you launch them, and you know where they're don't know where they're going to land.
Huh.
And I've just such a beautiful relationship with ambiguity that is just right up my alley. Now for Sweet Maria, this would be all
Yeah.
9 rings of hell for her.
Uh-huh.
Like the idea, like I'm thinking, like I wonder whose backyard I'll end up in,
Uh-huh.
and I wonder if we have anything in common besides me and my balloon. Um, so I think that the curiosity, the whimsy, the wonder, and then this next season of life, in inviting people in, I just wonder who will come. I've spent a lot of time up in Canada at a place that we built and then it burnt down and then we rebuilt it. So I've spent literally 1/2 of my entire life building and rebuilding this place.
Mm.
And so I think I can spend more time up there with people. Uh, Smaller rooms that kind of fit around a fire pit rather than larger rooms. And the larger rooms is fine. It's just for somebody else. That's not for me anymore. But to just have conversations like the ones you and I can have,
Hmm.
like that's where I want to spend the rest of my days.
Man, sign me up. I'll be there. The final question, you talked about like with films, like sometimes you see something as a viewer that connects and you connect it with your story. You kind of see a reflection of yourself. Is there a movie on your favorite movies list that you've seen yourself, a reflection of what Love Does is to you?
Oh, I'm just like immediately went to that Rudy, like with the jerseys, like, give him my spot, coach.
Yeah.
You know, he said, I remember the first guy in that movie, the character is told by the coach, man, I expect you to lead. You're the leader of this team.
Huh.
And he says to him, I believe I am. And he puts down his shirt. I'm
Wow.
like, the beautiful idea of laying down our lives like for our friends, not just metaphorically, but just actually to find somebody when you don't know what to say, just go be with them and be quiet and like to just say, yeah, I think that's it. And to be mindful of the people that are leading these beautiful lives. I think we may have a friend in common, Bill Loki, when he passed.
Yeah.
He just led such a courageous fight in against cancer for years and years.
Yep.
He had told me he only had about 2 weeks left to go, and it was a year before this next book was coming out. So I thought of a conversation we had about heaven, and he said, Bob, when I got to your place in Canada, you were all standing on the dock and welcoming me and calling my name. And he said, I think heaven's going to be like stepping from the boat to the dock.
Man.
And I thought it was such a beautiful metaphor. And he had 2 weeks to live and the book would be out in a year. So I dedicated it to my friend, Bill Loki. I said, Bill,
Wow.
You step from the boat to the dock. Welcome ashore, buddy.
Wow.
And then he didn't die.
No,
you promised.
He got in the way of a good story.
Yes, I'm like, it's even better story now. So Bill had called up and he said that he wants to have one last meal. And I was like, you keep telling me this, but I flew out from Arizona to have their one last meal with him. And it turned out that it was among his last. And just to see his courage in a life really well lived. And so when I see that, I take note of that. And I want to say, gosh, I want to leave behind the kind of legacy that's impactful the way he impacted me. And I think you and your movies, the people listening and the stories they're telling. So we're not aiming for popularity. What we're looking for is purpose.
Yep.
And the purposeful stuff is going to last through the ages.
Well said, man. Back at you. Bob, you're a dear friend, and I've learned a ton about story from you, but I've learned even more about what it means to be connected to people. And you've always been a dear friend, and we respect you as a storyteller, but I also respect you just as an individual that lives out your stories. And so,
oh man,
such a treat to have you on the podcast today on the Storytellers. We love you.
Thank you. Love you too, buddy.
All right, I'll see you hopefully at your place up north at some point soon.
Come on.
All right, buddy.
Come on. I'm the first house on the right after about 100 miles. Hopefully it won't be on fire this time.
I won't be looking for the smoke. I'll be looking for the house. Yes. So, all right, man.
All right.
I love you, buddy. See you. Man, I love that guy. I love every conversation I have with Bob. I just fill up pages of notes of ideas and thoughts that he leaves behind for me to kind of discover, even some that I discovered later. And I loved in that interview that half the time he was interviewing me about like, what's going on in you, Andy, and how would you describe yourself to others, and those type things that are super thought-provoking. And I just love how intentional he is with his stories. He's always looking for a story that's begun, that's kind of spin into a bigger story. And those stories are not about him being popular, like he said. It's about having a purpose and an impact, and being able to use those as an invitation to others. And I think the thing that I walked away from after kind of that conversation with Bob is that idea of finding a story that is yours, that is something you have to tell. Finding out what that story is, that just by being curious and having that whimsy and that kind of that idea of being up to mischief. But as you tell that story, do it in a way where it's not about promoting yourself. It's about an invitation to others. It's about helping them to see maybe a little reflection of what they've experienced, so that they can be invited to something far bigger, and ultimately the roads that lead towards redemption in Jesus and those things that we believe, but allowing them to discover it for themselves. And I think as a storyteller, it's so important to do that. You know, the idea of being super intentional with the stories that you tell, that not just trying to enter a popularity contest, but telling a story that is there to communicate and connect with people, some that are like you and some that aren't, and to allow them to kind of maybe experience things and ponder things that they have not previously thought of. And I think that's the ultimate goal of any storyteller that has a deep faith. I think that's what we want to do. That's what we try to do. I know that's what we try to do here at Kingdom Story Company with the stories that we tell, is to invite people on that vicarious emotional journey, to allow them to kind of consider things they normally maybe wouldn't have. And that's the highest calling for what we do as storytellers. So that's our show today. So excited to have you on the journey. We'll see you on the next episode of The Storytellers.
The Storytellers is a Kingdom Story Company production. It is produced by Nick Carey, with production assistance from Ben and Justin Bailey, and creative assistance from Jaron Weatherly and Beach Approach. Our executive producers are Kevin Downs and Brandon Gregory. Social media for the show is run by the Troops and Allies team, and our music is Twisted Rooster by Tommy Prophet. Special thanks to our entire team at Kingdom Story Company. To make sure that you never miss out on any of our exciting guests, subscribe to The Storytellers for free on YouTube at Kingdom Story Company or wherever you listen to podcasts. For exclusive first looks at our upcoming films, behind-the-scenes content, and invitations to advanced screenings, join the conversation as a Kingdom Insider at kingdomstorycompany.com and follow us at Kingdom Story Company across all platforms. As always, thanks for joining Andrew Erwin and his friends on The Storytellers.